All right, Jet fans, we're going to go through the draft today on JetCast. JetCast Shop is the only place to get official JetCast merchandise. You can buy t-shirts, hats, water bottles, and much, much more. All of our items are high quality. Order online and have your product shipped right to your door. Check out the latest gear today at shop.jetcastpod.com. What's going on, JetCast Nation? I am Pat, that's Ray. If you're new here, please subscribe and welcome to episode 19. This is going to be our first episode since the draft. Ray, first thoughts on the draft. I know we live streamed it. We weren't crazy about the first pick. I've warmed up to it a little bit. How do you feel?
Yeah, well, I don't think it was what we were expecting, but to be honest with you, nobody knew what to expect once Broderick Jones went to, once the Packers traded out the Steelers, moved up and grabbed him. But, we're hearing conflicting reports saying that the Jets, even if Broderick Jones was on the board, wouldn't have taken him. I've been very loud about how I don't think he's going to pan out as a great NFL prospect. I don't like him as a prospect. He's super raw for a first round talent. Was Will McDonald my choice? I don't know. He was definitely up there. I didn't have him graded in the top 15 in the draft. I had him in the early 30s probably going there. But, the guy wreaked havoc throughout college. And I think a lot of people were saying, especially on Twitter, like, well, Nolan Smith was there. Why didn't they grab Nolan Smith? I think the Jets are more in the mind of let's take the guy who put up the stats rather than the guy who's projected to eventually put up the stats. Nolan Smith was not that productive in college. We all know the McDonald, how crazy productive he
Well,
was
you
in
watched him play
college.
a lot, right? You're a Texas fan.
Yes, exactly. I always know, as being a Texas fan, when we would play them, it'd be like, all right, where's Will McDonald? He had in his sophomore year, 10 and a half sacks, in his redshirt junior year, 11 and a half sacks, and last year everybody's like, oh well, he had such a steep decline in sacks. But if you watch them play, Iowa didn't have anybody else really on that side of the ball to worry about. He got double teamed constantly, and then at 239 pounds, Iowa started to ask him to rush from the middle. I don't know why they would do that. Maybe they thought he could provide some push, but I don't know how many 239-pound linebacker, pass rusher hybrids are going to be able to blitz guys right up the middle with a bull rush. So if you go watch the kid's highlights, he's flashy. He's got the outside move. He's really developed and honed in that counter inside move, and now he's working on a spin move, which we all saw during the Senior Bowl. And supposedly, a lot of coaches take a lot out of the Senior Bowl. We saw it last year. The Jets came up and got Jermaine Johnson. It wasn't solely based off the whole Senior Bowl thing, but it definitely factored in. And this kid was absolutely dominant against the senior tackles and one-on-one. So I think that definitely played a big part into it. I'm excited about the pick. You can never have too many pass rushers. And I keep thinking this, my last point. We keep looking down the road. Next year, we're probably not going to have a first-round pick. What are the odds that we retain most of our pass rushers after this year? There's a really good chance Lawson's gone. Bryce Huff's an unrestricted free agent. And John Franklin Myers is making a lot of money. So you're adding to that room not only for this year, but for next year. I think the Jets are hoping by next year Jermaine Johnson and McDonald can take over the edge rushing positions for this defense.
You talk about Jermaine Johnson, and Will McDonald actually has much better tape than Jermaine Johnson. And like you said, production. He has the production to back it up. I agree with you that his numbers slipped because he was put into a 4 technique, which is not where he should be. He's got to be out, just like Salah said on the on the introductory phone call that they want to get him into a wide 9, which is where he belongs, having a speed rusher off the edge. He's going to live on third down, passing downs, and he could make a real difference, I think. I originally during the draft wanted JSN, but kind of looking back on it, I think it's a crowded wide receiver room as it is, and I think we're okay there, barring some crazy amount of injuries, knock on wood. Now, you could say the same thing that Will McDonald is also going to a crowded room, but with the rotation that they do, I don't think it's going to be as crowded as people think. So, like I said, I've warmed up to the pick. I know I wasn't happy the night of. We live streamed it. But we'll see. A lot of professional analysts are not killing the pick. Yeah, are not professional. Are not killing the pick like
I'll
like
never
a lot of
forget
us
when Mel
fans are.
Kiper. I'll never forget a couple years ago when Mel Kiper was saying that Mitch Trubisky was the number one quarterback in this class, and you go look behind him, who was behind him? Two guys who will probably be in the Hall of Fame one day, Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. So these so-called experts, they know just as much as you and I do. Yes, they might break down more film. But to your point, I know a lot of people are saying that he's going to a crowded room. First of all, he says he knows he's got to get bulked up to 250. You can't play linebacker in this league or pass rusher in this league at 239. You'll just get mauled.
Right.
But at 250, you absolutely can. Jermaine Johnson last year played around 250 to 255, closer to 255, but right in that range. But I also think the Jets, what's one move that they didn't make that we all expected them to make in the draft? We all expected them to go after a defensive tackle, and they didn't. I could see them taking JFM, asking him to bulk up a little bit maybe, try to get closer to that 288, 290 range, maybe slide him on the inside in some rotations. I could also see them making Michael Clemens more of a hybrid defensive tackle as well. He played in the low 270s last year. Could they get him up 10 pounds and get him into the low 280s and maybe the mid 280s and play defensive tackle? I could absolutely see them potentially doing that this year. For these athletes to add 10 pounds or take away 10 pounds, it is so easy. They just train, they add to their diet, they have personal chefs, so I'm not worried about any of these guys.
Okay, so second round. I have to take my victory lap a little bit here because in our last episode I told you I think they're going to take a center, and you said absolutely not. And sure enough, they take not just a center, but arguably the best center on the board. A lot of teams did have Tittman higher than John Michael Schmitz, and looking at his stats, I can see why. The kid is massive, right? Originally, it was coming out that he was 6'8". Turns out that's not actually true. He's really 6'6", but he's 325 pounds, I believe, which is 20 pounds heavier than Nick Mangold was at his playing weight. This kid
he plays around 313-ish.
Does he play? Okay.
Yeah.
Either way, yeah. He's a big kid. He's smart. He can get outside and pull, and I am very excited. I think this kid's going to be our tackle for the next decade.
Center.
See, I'm so worried about tackle. I'm also thinking about tackle. Center. Yes, I think he's going to be our center for the next decade. I hope so. What do you think?
He's one of those guys that you just click the film on, and he's a man amongst boys.
Right. You watch it, and you say that's a football player.
Right. Well, I remember last year, early on when I was at training camp, I'm looking at Mekhi Becton and going, "Holy cow, that guy looks like LeBron James when I go to basketball games. He looks like a man amongst boys." And one thing, this offensive line that we are building is gigantic. Now, a lot of people would say, well, 6'6", you really don't want a 6'6" center. It's a longer length to get to hike the ball. It's harder to get out of their stance usually. So, but when I'm watching their tape, you don't see any of that. He's able to play the zone scheme, the pulling scheme. He gets out of his stance really quickly, so I'm not worried about that at all. The only negative that we hear about him is his pad level. He's going to have to learn to be a little more consistent with that, especially being at the size that he is. That's one of the pertinent things that he's going to have to do. But I mean, I'm excited for this run game up the middle. It's just, I think a lot of us thought we were going to go tackle there, and for good reason. I mean, we had a lot of injuries on the offensive line last year, and center wasn't one of them. So now I keep hearing, it's so funny because you listen to Woody Johnson and he's just like all of us. He wants to win so bad.
Yeah.
First, it's everybody goes, well, you know who the quarterback is, right?
Right.
Right. I'm like, when I hear that, and then I hear in the press conference, well, we're gonna let McGovern and Tittman battle it out. If Tittman doesn't win the job, this is a missed pick.
Right.
Because you don't spend your high top 50 second round pick on a guy who's not going to start. That's why I refuse to see what these people saying, well, McDonald's only going to play on third down. I bet you he'll be out there in second and long. Because there's no way you're spending your one first round pick you have over the next 2 years on a Super Bowl contending team right now on a guy who's not going to play at least 40% of the snaps.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. And going just back to the offensive line, McGovern, I believe he was originally a guard. And then he moved over to center. So that just adds a little bit of versatility if someone else goes down on the line. I see that we're picking a lot of players that can actually move, can play various positions on the line, kind of like AVT, or at least have a little bit of experience there that can move from one side or the other. I really do love the pick. And like you said, if he doesn't beat out McGovern, and we paid McGovern on the cheap, the market wasn't there for him, right? So it's not like you're wasting money. It's a 1-year deal. I think it's 1.7 million, something like that, right? You're not paying him much.
Get out of it for like $100,000, something like that.
Well, they're not going to. They'd rather have they'd rather have the body and the experience of another player there. But like you said, like if he doesn't beat him out, then it was a best pick. I think he will beat him out easily.
It's like when they say, "Oh yeah, every position's a competition." That's what I love when Saleh says that. Every position's an open competition. I'm like, so is Aaron Rodgers' job in jeopardy? Like, don't lose all your credibility, Robert.
So what do you think? So before we keep going, do you think the Jets went with the best player available?
100%.
Right.
100%.
I feel it. Yeah, I feel the same.
And Douglas says it perfectly at his press conference, his first interview afterwards. He goes, no matter what, we always go best player available. You know who does that? The Ravens and the Eagles.
Right.
Where did Joe Douglas come from? The Ravens and the Eagles.
It's quality over quantity. Quality over quantity.
I'm one of those people that so strongly believe in best player available. You don't pick the project in the first 2 rounds. You never, ever, ever do that. And we've done that for years. We picked Vernon Golston. Vernon Golston was a project coming out of college.
Right.
He was ranked as a 3rd-round pick, and we took him top 10. Quentin Coples. If everybody remembers, Quentin Coples had one great year in college. It was his junior year, and then he sucked his senior year. His film sucked. He had no motivation in college, but Rex Ryan felt I could fix him. Kyle Wilson, another guy. Yeah, well, he struggled a little bit in zone coverage and reading defenses, but he was solid in man-to-man coverage. He's a bit of a project, so we drafted him 30th overall. Another project that we couldn't get right. The guys who we draft that weren't projects. Nick Mangle, the best center in the draft. Brickashaw Ferguson, the best left tackle in the draft. Darrell Revis, the best corner in the draft. I mean, when you go best player available, it's so much easier to justify a miss, which every GM has, than saying, oh, well, we drafted a guy who didn't produce in college, but we suspect he's going to produce in the pros. And that's why I think instead of going Nolan Smith, who I do like, I love him coming out of college, but I totally could see how they justified the pick. Nolan Smith had like 4 sacks last year. Mm-hmm. Didn't have much production other than that, but they say, okay, he runs a 4.39, he's fast as hell, he comes off the line, he's explosive. Will McDonald showed in college that he could be the better premier tackles in the college level, and he's already been there and done it. And for all those people that say, oh, well, he broke Von Miller's Big 12 sack record, but he played another season, he's got one more game in his entire college career than Von Miller. That should show you how special this guy could be.
Right. Right, and just going to the more recent drafts, best player available examples: AVT, Garrett Wilson,
Sauce Gardner.
Sauce Gardner, JJ. Yes, at the value, but then Brees Hall, like clear as day, we're going for quality over quantity, which is a vastly different approach than McCagnon was trying to do. Okay, moving on. Now we could talk about the tackle. I had tackles on my mind. Carter Warren out of Patterson,
Pittsburgh.
New Jersey, Pittsburgh.
20 minutes away from the stadium, this guy
Right,
lives.
right. I'm surprised he didn't just get in his car and drive down there right after the pick.
Well, he actually, I think, said that on one of his phone calls. Oh, I'm only 20 minutes away.
Right, I just take a ride down, just start shaking people's hands. Um, good depth piece, good swing tackle. I think he's not going to start right away, unless something insane happens. But yeah, good depth piece. I'm happy with it. I can't really complain. What are your thoughts?
He's a big boy, number one. Number two, I think Joe Douglas is following the exact same philosophy he did last season. What did he do in the fourth round last year? Drafted Max Mitchell, who's our starting right tackle this year. And shockingly, we don't feel totally overwhelmed that he will be bad. It's most likely going to be Max Mitchell.
Right.
So you draft Warren, you put him in a backup role. There's veterans all around. He's gonna be in the camp battle. He's not gonna win it, let's be honest. But he's gonna be able to learn in camp from guys like Brown, from Becton. They just brought in the other tackle who played with Rodgers in Green Bay, Billy. What's his last name?
Turner.
Is it Turner?
I think so. Yeah.
They brought him in another veteran, so he's going to learn from a lot of the veterans this year in practice. And I think
Turner.
that Joe Doug. One thing, and I've said this time and time again, if there's any position that I'm confident Joe Douglas knows how to draft, it's offensive line. And for anybody who wants to at me on Twitter, he drafted Elijah Vera-Tucker, moved up to get him. He drafted Max Mitchell in the fourth round and is now probably going to be a quality starter. And let's not forget, Mekhi Becton's rookie year, he was without a doubt the best tackle in the class and on his way to becoming an All-Pro. You can't predict injuries in the NFL unless somebody had a chronic injury in college and then you pick them up. His MRIs, all his medicals were clean at the combine. We all saw he ran like a horse at the combine. He's one of the fastest tackles out there. It was unbelievable watching him run at the combine. So you can't then turn around and say, oh, well, he's a bust because of injury. Because if there's no injury history and there's nothing in your medicals that shows that there's going to be an injury in the future, you can't call a guy a bust because of injury.
Right.
So he drafted 3 quality linemen, and I bet you Warren's going to be right there. And that's what I'm excited about, because they'll know by the end of the season if this guy's got potential to start. And who knows, maybe he's the left tackle of the future, and Becton walks after this year, and then we draft a couple of late round guys next year and continue that, because that's where you win in the NFL. You have to be able to draft at premium positions time and time again and hit, so you don't have to pay for it in free agency. We saw it last year with Sauce Gardner. Hopefully Jermaine Johnson turns into an elite pass rusher this year and takes that step. Same with Will McDonald. If they're able to do that, you don't have to pay Carl Lawson $15 million a year on the open market. If Warren becomes a serviceable left tackle and can start, you don't have to then go and pay Mekhi Becton, if he has a great year, $18 to $25 million a year, what he will command on the open market. So that is the key. Premium positions, drafting time and time again, and not missing.
Okay, round 5, 143 overall. Israel Abanikanda. I hope I said his last name right. Predictable depth pick. No Ty Johnson, right? So he's going to sit behind Brees, Carter, and he's got a good shot to beat out Bam Knight for the third spot. Also another Pitt guy. Super fast. I think it was 4.2? 4.4 in the 40. So I am...
He's a Blazer or a back.
Right. I mean, not only are we getting huge on the offensive line, but our playmakers are getting extremely fast. Again, good depth pick. He's got a good shot to beat Bam Knight. What are your thoughts?
I got a hot take for you.
What?
He's your starting running back, week 1. I
Is
don't think Brees. I don't think
No,
Brees
Brees not
Hall's
going to
gonna,
be ready. Brees won't be
Brees Hall's
ready.
going to start,
Yeah.
and I, without a doubt, he's going to be your starter. The kid averaged 6 yards a carry last year. Always averages over 5 yards a carry. Averaged 12 yards per reception in the passing game. He's got to work on his hands a little bit, but they're there, and he's got that blazing home run speed. We all like Michael
Listen,
Carter.
if the offensive line is this big and they can open up holes, you and me could probably run the ball and average 4 yards a carry at least.
Right. Well, I keep looking. Remember, Warren was his left tackle.
Right.
So I think this kid's day one. He's going to be the starter, and I hate to. I think the majority of the snaps are going to go to Hall and this kid. And then Carter's going to be your suitable third down back. That guy who comes out of the backfield. He's a little crafty, can catch the ball on the run, but I think Bam Knight's going to be the odd guy out. I think they're going to try to hide him on the practice squad and potentially protect him this year. But this kid, they drafted him to play. I think he's way more than just a depth piece.
Well,
I like his tape.
The pressure is on Michael Carter right now. The pressure's on Michael Carter. It's his year to put up or shut up. I love the kid, and I know last year and the year before he kind of dealt with like these nagging injuries here and there, but he's got to shine through. He really does.
Yeah, this kid had 1,400 yards rushing last year.
Wow.
Over 1,400 yards rushing in just 11 games. 6 yards a snap, and best of all, 20 touchdowns.
Again, production. The numbers are there.
Go watch the
numbers
film,
are
Jeff,
there.
and if you haven't watched the film, just do yourself a favor. Put the kid's name in. Hit highlights. You'll watch. He makes the first. Very much like Michael Carter. That's what I love so much about Michael Carter his first few years. It's so rare the first guy brings him down. Or if he does, he falls forward 3 yards before he falls down. This kid's the same. But when he breaks that first tackle, when he puts on the jets, no one's catching him. Or if they do, he stiff arms them and still gets away. He's that kind of talent.
All right, 170 overall. Zaire Barnes, linebacker. We needed help at the linebacker position. Another depth fill piece. Happy about it. We definitely needed to pick some sort of linebacker out of this draft. I like the pick.
Yeah, he's what you said. He's a depth piece. He's a project piece. I'll be very surprised if the Jets don't bring back Kwan Alexander on some cheap deal. This kid is probably going to be, if he's going to play and start, it's probably going to be more towards next year. He's going to have to earn his snaps this year on special teams. He's the kind of guy where he's got to come in and contribute right away. If he's not going to make it on special teams, they'll end up cutting him. But I mean, he's a depth piece. That's what he is. And hopefully he'll develop into a starter down the line. He almost is like that Blake Cashman kind of linebacker. You draft him late. He was really productive in college, and you hope that it's going to translate into the pros, but it's probably going to take a year to get that system down and for him to be starting. Maybe he starts towards the end of the year. If there's injuries, he'll be forced to step in, but he's more of a depth piece.
Okay. Next one, and this one's a little interesting. Jarek Bernard Converse played a lot of safety. I think last year just switched to playing cornerback and held his own, did pretty well. I like the idea of having a little bit of a flex piece there that could play safety and cornerback. When you get into these late rounds, you're starting to get names of guys that no one's really heard of. But it is interesting that they picked someone who's played a lot of safety. We know that we are thin a little bit at safety.
Yep, he's a big, strong dude. Like what you said, he's got really good size for himself. He's got 56 college starts. He uses his size. He's a pretty solid open field tackler. He's able to drag down the guys. But like what you said, he projects to be a safety at the next level because of his size. He's 6'1", nearly 200 pounds. He's probably going to put on a little more beef. And when he's another depth piece, One thing in college that he did consistently was when the ball's in the air, he kind of panicked. He would turn his head and get caught. He would get baited. So that's something that you can grow out of. He's got all the physical traits. The physical traits are there. He's a more than willing tackler. I see him potentially moving him to free safety, get some snaps in there with Tony Adams. That's one position I'm shocked that the Jets didn't address earlier in the draft or in free agency, is that free safety position. Supposedly the Jets really love the kid Tony Adams, that they're going to get him a shot. Maybe he follows in behind. Maybe Davis is still on the team. Who knows? But he's in a depth piece. He's the kind of guy I can see that's going to be on the practice squad for a year or so.
And finally, 220 overall, Zach Kuntz from Old Dominion, 6'7", 4.5 speed, had a really bad knee injury, so he fell. I saw some drafts after the fact putting him somewhere around the third, early fourth round. I'm shocked that he fell. I know he has to work a little bit on his route running, but 73 catches, 692 yards, 5 touchdowns. Again, numbers and production are there. He's a big kid. He's a big go up and get the ball kind of guy. Not much of a blocking tight end. What do you think?
Yeah, a lot of his pro comps are he'll max out like a Mike Gesicki, but he is an absolute physical freak. He probably has the best combine stats for a guy his size in the history of the combine. A lot of people were worried about the knee injury, but he clearly showed out that that's not going to affect him going forward. He's probably my most exciting pick, probably a guy that I'm really going to monitor in camp. It sucks because we already have Jeremy Ruckert, who's a developmental tight end, who I think is going to get a lot more snaps this year. You got Uzama, you got Conklin, and this kid's going to be fighting for that spot. So I could almost see by default him being put on the practice squad, but he's probably going to be one of the guys that they protect and look towards 2024 season with him as they try to mold him into this offense.
All right, so obviously we know that this year's draft was not going to be as wild and crazy as last year's draft, but it didn't disappoint for me. At least maybe that night of the first round, I felt a little disappointed based on who was still left on the board and and picking Will McDonald. But now looking back on it, I think it was a pretty solid draft. I gave it like a B plus in my grading. If you had to give a letter grade to the draft in totality, what would you say?
I hate doing is doing that because last year, I hate giving draft grades because at the end of the day, a few years ago, we got Leonard Williams at 6 and Jamal Adams at 6, and we were told they were both the best players in the draft. Now, Adams probably turned out to be one of the better players in the draft. The guy was all pro, but Leonard Williams never lived up to his expectations with us, so it's so hard to grade drafts. I mean, I'll leave it as like a C plus, a B minus. That's what I'll leave it at. I'll leave it as a B minus with a potential. It all depends. If Will McDonald goes out there and start wrecking heads, no one's going to give
heads
about the 4th, 5th, and 6th round picks. No one's going to care.
No.
So, it's a B minus for me right now, but pending. And the reason why I say that too is I like the Will McDonald pick. But the amount of pass rushers we already have on this team, barring major injury, which is always a concern. Carl Lawson's, his knees are made out of glass. We all know that. And then we're one other injury away from, all of a sudden this kid's starting getting a ton of reps. So we don't know. But
don't forget about Michael Clemens. They got Michael Clemens in there too. People forget about him.
I think they're going to move him towards the inside. I said that earlier. I think they're going to ask him to add weight because there's just too many guys. What is he going to get? 6 snaps a game? I just don't see it. And I think he's got crazy strength for an interior guy. So that's probably a reason. I keep saying, well, Tittman might not start. If Tittman doesn't start week 1, that grade's going to collapse.
Right.
If McDonald isn't getting at least 35% of the snaps, a little better than 1 out of every 3 snaps on the defensive side of the ball week 1, it's a fail. Because we're trying to win a Super Bowl, and you can't win a Super Bowl if your top 2 picks aren't on the field.
Right.
And that's,
we need them to contribute in a meaningful way. We really do.
That's right.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us. Tell us in the comments what you think about the draft. Give us your grades, and we'll see you back in about a week
Yeah,
with episode 20. Go ahead, Ray.
and tune in Wednesday, Paul Riley and I
Right.
on our Twitter show at JetCastPod on Twitter. Give us a follow there. We have one of the very, very good sports writers who covers Pittsburgh college football and he covers the Steelers. And he's going to give us a great breakdown on Warren and the running back out of Pittsburgh. So make sure to come through. It's a live audience. You can come and ask questions. You just raise your hand. We bring you up, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And we're bringing out the analysts who watch them every single day to give us a legitimate breakdown of what these players project to be at the NFL level.
All right. So for those of you that are interested, I'll have the link to the Twitter space in the description of the video. So like I said, thanks for hanging out with us. We'll talk to you guys on Wednesday, and we'll see you in a week on our next episode. Go Jets.
Go Jets.